What if Edward betrayed Bella's heart? Part 5. Albert Einstein once said, "There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle." As time went by, I began to lean toward the third line more often than not. February 17, 2012. Edward, do you need anything before I take a bath? I asked as I leaned against the door frame. I watched him in the living room, staring at the blank screen on the TV, sitting in his wheelchair, since he refused to let me help him out of it. He shook his head and mouthed no to me before going back into zombie mode. He'd been in a deep depression since the hospital released him the month before. Losing his independence made him very unhappy, and although he tried to hide it from me as best as he could, I could see right through him. "Edward, honey, it'll get better." "What?" He laughed humorously. "My legs are my life." It was the first time he'd openly admitted to being unhappy, so I knew today must have been a particularly bad day. I know it's hard, but everyone told us it would take time to adjust. I came into the room and went over to sit next to him. I took his hand in mine and kissed it gently. "All we need is time to get used to everything." He nodded sadly before his eyes watered. "It's not fair. I know. Life rarely is. You shouldn't have to adjust. It's not you sitting in this chair. You can walk away and find someone who can give you everything that I can't," he grumbled. "Stop. How many times do we have to go over this? I'm never leaving. You can't push me away or try giving me an out. I might as well be in that chair with you," I told him, and he winced at the idea. "Nothing worth having in life is easy, Edward. We need to work through this." A small meek smile grew on his face, though didn't quite touch his eyes. "You're right. I know. I always am. It's a curse really," I joked, and he rolled his eyes. "I love you, you know. I know you do, and I love you too. Always. And forever," he finished. "Okay." I breathed, glad we'd talked about this. "Shout if you need me." I went and jumped into the bath, relaxing in the warm water as it released all the tension in my body. Being a caregiver for Edward was a hard job, but I wouldn't have anyone else do it, and I enjoyed spending the time with him. When I thought about it, Edward and I had come a long way. Before, in the early years of our marriage, if one of us had an accident or something had happened that left one of us in this position, I don't think we would have made it through together. We'd both been shallow, naive, ignorant, and stubborn. I would have given up hope if my perfect world had crumbled around me, and Edward would have panicked and done something drastic. We'd rushed into marriage, made mistakes, and realized a lot after the fact. After everything had happened, we'd realized the difference between love and loneliness, happiness and sadness, life and death. We'd been going through the motions, and had we not lost so much, I would have said we were better off going through the bad to get to the good. When I started to prune, I knew it was time to exit the bath. As I walked into the living room, I found Edward sitting on the couch. "How did you get there?" I asked in amazement. He shrugged, like it was nothing, but I could see victory dancing in his eyes. I sat down beside him and leaned my head on his shoulder. His arm wrapped around me, and he pressed a kiss on the top of my hair. "It's like the old days," he smiled. "It's better," I argued. We watched some crappy TV show for a while. I was beginning to doze on Edward's shoulder when I noticed something different. Something that should not be happening. Suddenly I gasped and jumped away from him. "What?" he asked, frantically searching the room. I gasped as I tried to find air in my lungs to speak. "Why, your feet. What's wrong with?" He stopped mid-sentence, his eyes widening. He saw it. I saw it too, but it couldn't have been possible. Not unless there was someone up there looking over us. But it was happening, and this wasn't a dream. This was real. "You're moving your toes. Mr. Cullen, I have some amazing news for you," Dr. Bloom said as he strolled in with Edward's chart. Edward was sitting in the hospital bed while I sat beside him. "Though it's not so good for the doctor who gave you your original diagnosis." "But that's you," I replied, and Dr. Bloom nodded his head. "You're right, it is. I missed something big." "Well," Edward prodded, impatient to hear the news. "Mr. Cullen, when I reviewed your condition, I failed to see that your form of paralysis is incomplete. Therefore it was possible you could regain feeling once your body began to heal fully. You've suffered from an incomplete form of paralysis called a cauda equina lesion, or spinal shock for short." I was silent, trying to let the information sink in. Edward, on the other hand, wanted more. Spinal shock, he questioned. It's a form of shock associated with acute injury to the spinal cord. Temporary suppression of reflexes controlled by segments below the level of injury. The period of shock may last from hours to months. It's beginning to wear off because the swelling of the injury has gone down. So, I'll walk again, he whispered, his voice scratchy. You will, it will take a while though. See, the bullet snagged the lumbosacral cord in your spine. That means while you will walk, you'll have a limp. You'll probably require a cane or crutches. However, you won't play sports or go running again since your muscles and nerves will be weak. Tears splayed down Edward's cheeks as I sat in shock. I couldn't believe we were being given a second chance. And everything will be in working order? He asked, his eyes darting down to his crotch. Dr. Bloom laughed through his nose. Yeah, it should when you're fully recovered, though I can't promise you anything with regards to conception. I looked to Edward to give him a smile. I didn't want him to worry about the future. I wanted him to be thankful he was here in the now. God only knew, I was. Thank you, Doctor. Edward shook hands with Dr. Cyrus Bloom, and that was the last we ever saw of him. He'd resigned after misdiagnosing Edward, but we hadn't blamed him for the mistake. If anything, we owed him more than anyone. He'd saved Edward's life, more than once now. He'd given Edward something money couldn't buy, hope. November 16, 2014. There were many things I was thankful for in life. One was for my family. They were the ones who stood behind me at every turn, who held my hand through every dilemma and kept me together like glue when I broke down. They were there for us when Edward told them about his past, what Irina and Tanya had done to him. And then I came back here. Once I saw Bella, I knew I was a goner all over again, he finished, and I squeezed his hand in support. Everyone was speechless, not really knowing what they could say at this point. They had misjudged Edward, but then again I had done that myself. The silence in the room was broken by Esme's pained sob. Why wouldn't you tell us? She choked out. Edward held her hand in his free one. I was ashamed, though now I see I had nothing to be ashamed of, and there was nothing that we could have done back then. Their family had too much power. I couldn't take burdening you with something I wasn't sure I'd ever get justice for. Carlyle cleared his throat, choking up, before he pulled Edward in his arms. I am so sorry. We failed you. We all did, apart from Bella. Emmett nodded his head in agreement as Rose looked on, truly remorseful. It's okay. You didn't know, Edward told them. But the main thing is I'm getting justice now. They're going to jail for a long time along with the rest of their family. Even if Irina and Tanya get out, they won't make it far without their family for protection. Either way, Edward, Rose spoke, shocking the hell out of us all. We'll work for your forgiveness. There was a silence as they stared at one another. It was strange for everyone. Rose and Edward had been sworn enemies for years. But I think this was her way of saying she was sorry. There's nothing to forgive. Secondly, I was thankful for Dr. Bloom and the hospital staff in Forks and Seattle that had not only brought Edward back to life but had given him a goal to reach for the future. With their help and dedication, Edward had learned to walk again within a year. His face was filled with deep concentration and his hands clutched the bars at his sides as his doctor spoke words of encouragement to him. Sweat poured from Edward's face while I looked on hopefully. You can do it, I assured him. Slowly, ever so slowly, Edward got one leg to move in front of the other before he collapsed of exhaustion. To some it was a small victory. To us it was everything. Third, was for the wonderful man I'd married, then divorced, then married again. I was thankful that he was alive, healthy, and most importantly, happy. In the past 2 almost 3 years I'd never seen Edward so full of life and truly vivacious. If anything, nowadays Edward was spreading love instead of doom and gloom. Hey Edward, look at you go, man. Nahuel shouted as he came inside with a 6-pack of beer in his right hand. Yeah, Edward smiled. He'd really aced recovery and learned to walk again in no time. It feels good to be back on my feet. Nahuel greeted me and leaned in for a hug, which I returned gladly. Since everything was over with James, we'd actually become close friends. It took a while for me to warm to him, but he and Edward acted like they'd been friends for years. A knock on the door sounded and I bit my lip. I hope you don't mind, but we invited someone else. No, not at all, Nahuel assured me. Angela. I greeted as she ran into my open arms. I missed you. Bella. I only heard what happened. Oh my God. How is he? Angela looked good. Her skin was glowing and though her eyes showed some degree of happiness, I wasn't convinced. He's fine, is all I got out before a bottle dropped behind me. Angela. Nahuel asked, his voice barely audible. Nahuel. Her eyes lit up and Edward and I smirked at each other. One look and our work here was done. Then last but not least, I was thankful for the wonderful baby girl I held in my arms. The one with bronze hair and dark brown eyes. The one that would adorn my knee and call me mother. The one that would look up to Edward as her hero. My baby, our baby. Edward, I whispered as I lay naked in his arms, tired and spent after our lovemaking. Yeah, sweetheart, what would you say to having kids now? I asked and played with the hair on his chest. Edward's head shot up and his smile was infectious. Really? Now, you're ready. Let's get to it then. We should probably fix up the spare room into a nursery and we'll go to the doctor tomorrow and pick up the pamphlets on pregnancy because Rose said they're really good. They must be good because they're having twins. He rambled excitedly, smiling the whole time. And what if I told you that I was already pregnant? I asked, biting my lip while a smile spread on my face. Edward shot out of bed, his eyes shining as he looked down at me. Already? You're sure? I nodded and before I even had time to blink Edward was down, kissing my belly that wasn't even showing yet. I love you and I'll be the best father ever to our child, he promised. He'd loved her beyond words even then, just as I had. Our little Abby. Abigail Bloom Cullen, Edward tried as he rubbed my swollen tummy months later. It fit perfectly and made my insides turn warm and fuzzy. And what if it's a boy? I challenged. It's not. He scoffed, shook his head and kissed my rounded tummy softly. That is my little princess in there. I got all choked up and I don't know if it was hormones or just me being crazy but I needed Edward to be tied to me again in every possible way. He was such a good man. I'd be a fool not to want him by my side forever. Marry me. Edward looked at me queerly. What was that? Marry me again. Right now. Today. Are you sure? Get a suit. We're getting married right now. I paused after I stood from the bed. I just have to pee first. From the sound of Edward's musical laugh, he was all for getting married again. And get married we did. That very day we went to the local registry office and signed on the dotted line. We didn't need rings or a fancy ceremony. We used the ring I hadn't taken off since Edward had surprised me with it in the locket and only had Edward's parents and Charlie in attendance as our witnesses. It was perfect because it was imperfect. Like us. I was officially Mrs. Edward Cullen again on October 2, 2014. Of course, Edward had been right all along about the baby being a girl. Abby came out finally after 6 hours of labor on November 16. She was stubborn, refusing to come out quickly or latch on when I tried to breastfeed. Just like your father, I muttered but couldn't keep the grin off my face the whole time. We all knew she got her stubbornness from me, I was just too stubborn to admit it. I couldn't believe we were parents. That finally it was our turn. Alice and Jasper had Evelyn, Henry and little Bonnie. Emmett and Rose had Brady and Paul, who were twins, and clones of Emmett in both looks and behavior. Now we had Abby and everything was perfect. I smiled at Edward's sleeping figure in the hospital chair next to my bed, although I'd fought with him about sleeping there hours before. You'd think after all we'd been through he'd take better care of his back, but no. I wouldn't have it any other way. I admitted and kissed my princess's little button nose, and then watched her tiny face scrunch up because I'd disturbed her slumber. I sighed happily. After all we'd been through, the highs, the lows, the really lows. I'd have to say that the struggle was worth it. Without it, I don't know what would have become of me and Edward. Perhaps we'd be adrift in the sea of loneliness had it not be for Tanya and Irina, who at the time had forced us apart, yet ultimately brought us closer together. I snorted at the thought of them. They were rotting away in a jail cell with the rest of their family and in my opinion, it was where they belonged. They weren't getting out of there anytime soon unless it was in a body bag. I was positive that if Edward and I had have carried on in our marriage without interruption, we wouldn't have made it. We were too young, too foolish. But thanks to life and death, we'd been forced to grow together. If somebody asked me now if I believed in miracles, I'd say yes. Without them I'd have nothing. I wouldn't be holding my miracle in my arms right now or snuggling up to him every night if I didn't believe. Still, even though miracles can happen, there are things in life we have to fight for. But the only things you fight for are the ones that are truly worth it. I hope she was worth it. The words rang as clear as day in my head and came out of my mouth before I could stop them. She wasn't worth it, a velvety voice in the corner answered, and I looked to see emerald eyes gazing at me. But getting to fall deeper in love with you than I ever imagined was possible that was worth it. Seriously, this man can make my heart skip a beat with one sentence. I love you. I smiled and Edward came forward to claim my lips softly, his hand cupping the back of my neck as he did. And when we separated it was only for him to leave a kiss on each of his daughter's sleeping eyelids. I love you too, always, and forever. November 2017, Serenity, Peace. Those are two things you do not get when you have a 3-year-old bolting around the house and latching onto whatever she can get her chubby little hands on. Abby, be careful, I warned as I saw her jumping up and down on the couch like a child possessed. Then look, what do you know, she's on her butt crying her eyes out and we both know there's only one person who can make it better. Edward, I called and he came rushing in, albeit a bit awkwardly due to his limp, at the sound of his baby in tears. My little princess Abby, what happened? He cooed as he picked her up and she curled into his chest. Her crying turned to a low whimper in his arms. Of course she was Daddy's little angel and I knew that his love for her in no way diminished the love he had for me. I had to admit watching them together was the cutest thing I'd ever seen and I couldn't stop the smile that spread on my face. I was bouncing. She snuffled and her bottom lip jutted out as she told of her brush with danger. She didn't pronounce her words correctly yet, so it sounded like she said, I Osbone sing. It was adorable, even Edward couldn't stop himself kissing her rosy little cheeks. And I fell on the floor. AWH poor baby, Edward pulled her tighter against his chest and shot me a smug smile. I rolled my eyes, though I secretly couldn't wait for the years when he'd become the enemy. Then it'd be my time to shine. You know what, I thought I heard Mommy asking you to stop. Abby went silent so, true to the parent code, he used her full name. Abigail Bloom Cullen, did Mommy ask you to stop bouncing? The poor kid looked everywhere but at Edward as she nodded her head. And you didn't listen? Oh, strict word was coming out. Abby's bottom lip jutted out further and wobbled. You could see it was taking everything Edward had not to comfort her. I think you should apologize and promise to listen to Mommy in future. The munchkin turned her head swiftly, her bronze curls bouncing with the movement as her chocolate dough-shaped eyes locked with mine. I'm sorry, Mommy, I'll listen. That's a good girl. I made my way over to the pair in front of me and pressed a kiss on my baby's forehead. It's my fault you were born without coordination. Edward snorted. Abby's face scrunched up to show she didn't have a clue what we were talking about. Okay, Angel, how about some cookies to heal your wounds? I asked and was met with screams of delight. So that's how we spent our evening, baking cookies that Abby didn't even get to eat because she fell asleep while we were mixing the batter. We made sure to take pictures, because every parent needs something to embarrass their children with when it comes time to bring boyfriends home. Edward and I took Abby and carefully stripped off her sundress, which she had insisted on buying because it was yellow like Belle's in Beauty and the Beast. If anything, I was just glad she'd chosen something that wasn't pink. Everywhere you looked in her room was either pale pink or soft cream. No exceptions, because in Abby's own words, princesses wear pink. We dressed her in her Barbie PJs and settled her down for the night. Edward and I took our time smothering her in kisses before we left, knowing we wouldn't wake her. She slept like the dead. Then we retreated back to the kitchen. That was easier than usual. Edward saw it as he trailed kisses up the side of my neck while his hand snaked around my waist, pulling me against him. What should we do with all our free time? I could feel what he wanted to do against my hip. But I figured I'd make him work for it. Clean up the cookie batter then get some sleep. Nope. I had something more pleasurable in mind. More pleasurable, you say? I asked and a smile spread across my face. Way more pleasurable, he breathed against me, his lips skimming my ear as he dragged out the word. I turned around and locked my arms around his neck, bringing his lips to mine as he devoured me completely, turning me to mush. His lips sucked on my bottom one before he relinquished it so his tongue could play with mine. A moan escaped him and he'd decided he'd had enough of this torture. If I could carry you like I used to, you would be over my shoulder and naked in no time. I laughed at him for a moment before I pulled him towards the bedroom, shutting the door. We were always careful about closing the door, since we'd developed a knocking rule with Abby. Let's just forget why we even needed to create the knocking rule. Edward, true to his word, had me naked within 2 minutes, like he wanted to get me undressed before I could change my mind. Yeah, like that was happening. He was down to his boxes himself as he laid me on the bed. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for this, he breathed as he stood above me. 3 weeks without being with you is too long. I moaned wantonly. It had been too long. He'd been traveling for his new job, where he was providing legal services for male rape victims. Earlier in the week Abby was sick, so the last couple of days we hadn't really found the time for this. But finally our daughter was in bed, Edward didn't have work the next day and we were alone. Nothing would stop us now. After a rather heated session, we lay panting together, utterly spent and worn. Now was the perfect time to tell him. He was happy, stress-free, relaxed and sated. Yet I couldn't do it. I don't know why I was nervous to tell him. I mean, it wasn't like he was unhappy the last time. But this time was different. Last time, we'd been ready to have a child, 1 child. 2 was an entirely different story, especially since this one was unexpected. But every time I tried to open my mouth, the words just wouldn't come out. Are you okay, Bella? Edward asked, sensing something was up. Well, I feel queasy and I missed my period, so I might be pregnant. Whoop whoop, everything is great. You knocked me up again. Way to go, sperm. Instead nothing but a horse. Yeah, I'm just tired, came out before I snuggled down and turned my back to him. Are you sure? You've seemed kind of off the last couple of days. Damn him for knowing me so well. I have news, I admitted. And I have no idea why I'm so nervous to tell you, but I am. Edward sat up on his elbow so he could look at me properly. What's going on? Well, I missed my M. He looked back at me blankly. I think I'm pregnant, I blurted finally. Edward's eyes widened and his mouth gaped a little. When he seemed to get over the shock of it, he spoke. Not that I'm not happy about you being pregnant again, but how is that possible? We've been so careful, I don't see how. I looked away and my lip wobbled. Don't notice, don't notice. He noticed. No, no Bella, I'm sorry, don't cry. I'm really happy about it, I promise. I can't wait to be a father again and to see Abby with a little brother or sister. I was just surprised, that's all. Come here. He pulled me into his arms and kissed the tears that were flowing down my cheeks. I think it was the whole pregnancy thing that was making me emotional. I honestly had no clue why I was crying, because Edward assured me I'd only taken him by surprise. Sorry, I stuttered as more tears flowed freely. Fuck you, hormones. No, I'm sorry, I was insensitive. I really am thrilled about it. I know, I snuffled and tried to get control of myself. We're going to have another baby and it'll be perfect just like Abby. He smiled brightly after he'd said it, like he was trying it out. Slowly he slid down my body until he reached my stomach, and like he'd done with Abby, he placed a small kiss there. I smiled and this time tears of joy ran down my cheeks. Edward, yeah, he answered, his face still smiling down at my stomach. I'm glad I bet on you. July 2018. My face literally hurt. That's how much I was smiling as I looked at my daughter talking to her little brother while he lay in the Moses basket. You should have seen Mommy's belly. It got so big, she exclaimed, her arms stretching dramatically to show the tiny infant. It looked like she had a beach ball under her shirt, but Daddy said it had to get big so you could live there until you were ready to come meet me. Edward came in the room, overhearing Abby talking to her brother. He stood behind her smirking at me as we eavesdropped on their conversation. Then when you came out of Mommy's belly, Daddy was crying, but he said they were happy tears, and I think that's stupid cause nobody cries when they're happy. Suddenly there was a gasp from her and she spun around to me. Look Mommy, he opened his eyes. Really sweetheart, it's probably because he loves listening to you. Her smile took up half of her face. Edward sighed happily before he leaned down and pressed a kiss on Abby's head. Remember, Tyler is only a baby, Abby. He needs to go to sleep, and do you know what time it is now? She shook her head. 9 o'clock, sweetheart. It's very late, so why don't I read you a princess story, then we'll go to bed and you can talk to Tyler all day tomorrow. Her mouth turned into an O shape as she nodded. She ran to me quickly and wrapped her arms around my neck. I held her to me and pressed kisses on her cheeks. I had missed kissing her goodnight the 3 nights I'd been gone. It was my first night home from the hospital with Tyler. Night, Mommy. I'm glad you and Tyler are home now. Night, baby, and we're happy to be home with you too, I replied. When she left my lap, I watched her tiptoe over to Tyler's basket. She leaned down and pressed her lips against his cheek softly. Night, Tyler, she whispered and ran to Edward, who caught her and lifted her up to bring her to her room. The door closing behind them woke Tyler. His wails pierced through the room and I heard Edward shout an apology as he carried Abby up. Ah, poor baby. Did silly daddy wake you with the door? I asked Tyler. He wiggled his tiny arms around looking for me before I picked him up and cradled him against my chest. My unexpected miracle, Tyler Emmett Cullen. We'd named him Tyler after the man who'd basically given his life for Edward. It didn't matter that he'd told James where we were, he'd given up his life to protect Edward in the first place. So we thought it only fitting for him to be recognized for it. Considering everything Emmett had done to help put Edward back on the straight and narrow, and because he'd always been a big brother to me, we were naming our son's second name after him. He was kind and fiercely loyal, and it was nice to see his face when we told him. I looked down at Tyler, his thin strands of hair already sticking out in a million different directions, making him look more and more like Edward. It's okay, little man. Mommy has you, I cooed, and he settled after getting in a comfy position in my arms, his head resting on my breast as if it were a pillow. I smiled and couldn't seem to grasp how I'd ever thought the life I had without Edward was good. I realized I had been nowhere near happy. Now that I knew what happiness was. This was my dream and everything that mattered. My family, my future, my forever. How's it going, lil bro? Emmett yelled as he marched into my room, no longer even bothering to knock. How did he even get into my resort room without a key? I could not meet his eyes, understanding that if I did he would see the truth in them. What's incorrect? Did something make up? Is it one of these days? He asked, actually concerned. My eyes commenced to blur and I sat on the brink of my bed with my head in my palms, defeated over again by my demons. If I attempted to speak I knew I would lose it and spill my guts to him. It is due to the fact Bella's here, isn't always it. You promised me you'll be okay if we invited her. Why failed you inform me it changed into too much, too soon, Edward? I will take you domestic if you want. I will do whatever to ensure you're okay. I am sorry I requested an excessive amount of you. Subsequently I couldn't take it. Listening to her call set me off, and that I could no longer bear the weight of my sense of right and wrong. My brother have been the only who'd helped me through my darkest days, so once I lifted my head, he knew routinely that I had used. I slipped. Emmett. She stated she was seeing someone and that he became coming to the marriage. Jake. I spat his name, hating how it tasted on my tongue. It got too much and that I slipped. Jesus, wherein did you even get the coke? He growled, searching, pissed as hell at the same time as he marched round my room to find any ultimate pills on show. It does not be counted. The factor is I used. It is long gone now and I hate myself for it. You can't tell Mom and Dad, although they just barely agreed to convey me return to Forks and not ship me off to rehab. No, they agreed to take you lower back in view that there is a murdering psychopath when you due to the fact you boned his girlfriend. Even after I advised you to stay far away from them, I'd add. Quote, I failed to touch Victoria. I shouted, status as much as my complete peak to show Emmett I wasn't afraid of him. Don't deliver me that bullshit. There's no way you cheated on Bella with broads after which abstained from sex for 2 years afterwards. I understand you have desires, but did you need to fuck Mr. Crazy's whore? Look wherein that were given her. Look wherein it got you. My mind ran to the photo of Victoria's bloodless, useless body, lying in a pool of her own blood at the white carpet. I best saw an image from the police document, however it became enough to stick in my thoughts all the time. However Emmett became incorrect, I did not touch Victoria, even though she had desired me to. It turned into sad that she died for no purpose, apart from leaving a man who turned into absolutely insane. I failed to do it. I have my reasons for no longer having intercourse with Victoria. Certainly, you don't know me as well as you suspect you do. I spat and marched into the rest room to splash bloodless water in my face, as though the water may want to wash away the thoughts in my thoughts. You were right, Edward. I knew the antique you, however this new you usually confuses me. 1 minute he's on the road to make upperation, the following he's snorting strains due to the fact Bella's lifestyles goes well. Emmett sneered and I looked at him closely, trying to see if he even found out what he became pronouncing, or simply letting phrases spew out of his mouth. Ultimately he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. I'm sorry, I'm being a total dick whilst you need me the most, bro. Stop it. I permit myself and all of us else down. I was so sick of being stuck right here. First I might be getting higher, after which something might hit me hard and knock me down once more, wherein I felt like I had to begin over. That left my family and me to should build me returned makeup once more, only to watch for the next time I would come tumbling down. What do you need to do? Emmett requested in a calm and information voice. What did I need to do? Leaving became now not an choice. If I left, I might handiest sink in addition into despair, knowing that Bella and that I were in the identical place, and I ignored that time to talk to her, to be close to her again. I need to see her again. I need to recognize for certain she's glad, and I need to peer this Jake asshole for motives I do not even recognize. I responded him actually. Are you certain that is an amazing idea? Emmett asked skeptically. Who knows? I shrugged. However, it's something I sense like I ought to do. Emmett sighed and stood makeup. K, when you have to. Listen, I ought to pass select makeup Tyler on the airport. You can cross-wake Bella makeup for Rosie, however do now not do whatever makeup or try something along with her. He warned me, giving me a stern look, which he inherited from mother. Earlier than I am going, swear to me, on Bella's life, that each one the coke is gone. I swear. I had already flushed the remaining of what I had down the rest room. Okay, I accept as true with you. So long, and take into account, don't do something makeup. Bella's room changed into simplest one ground above mine, and I determined to take the steps to offer myself time to chill out and think about something to say to her. Something like, does Jake make you glad? And then strive not to get beforehand of myself and ask, do you observe you may marry him? The notion of Bella marrying a person else made me need to curl makeup into a ball and die. Once I got to her door, I took a calming breath earlier than I knocked. Whilst she did not answer the 1-3 time I knocked, I was approximately to bash the door in to make sure she became okay. Fortuitously, I saw a residence keeper coming my way earlier than I broke whatever down. Excuse me, could you be able assist me? I requested, and the woman nodded her head eagerly. Her eyes were roaming makeup and down my frame, practically eye-fucking me. I forgot my key and my wife is interior dozing. I do not need to wake her makeup. I smiled on the idea of calling Bella my wife again. It felt precise even to pretend for a second that I used to be worth of her. Oh, the woman said, seeming disillusioned that I used to be taken. Pleasant. She swiped a little card through the slot and the door popped open. Thank you. I smiled and went in her, noticing right away what a pigsty Bella's room changed into. She had never been a tidy individual, and that I smiled on the reminiscence of the bathroom in our antique house. Bella could have clothes, bras, B6F D8 D88 D79 Ed 1018 DF 623 DOB 49 E84 E7, towels, hair merchandise, and anything else you could image thrown all around the area. I, alternatively, turned into a neat freak and needed to have the entirety, so as I'd spend the whole day organizing and cleansing the rest room, best for it to be makeup again day after today. I surely ignored cleaning that bathroom after her. I neglected the entirety to do with her. Bella, I whispered as I stepped similarly into the darkish room. I found her a tangled mess in the center of the sheets. Her hair gave the impression of a bird's nest and her face become smeared with B6F D8 D88 D79 Ed 1018 DF 623 DOB 49 E84 E7 from remaining night, but she nonetheless seemed quite stunning to me. Bella, I known once more, crouching down in the front of her. Edward, she replied, her voice hoarse. She sounded so hungover. Bella, make makeup. All at once she flew makeup out of the bed screaming, almost giving me a heart assault on the age of 27. She held a flimsy white sheet near her body, and that I found out she ought to have been bare beneath it, Meanwhile my cock got here to life for the first time in 2 years. I knew that this failed to appearance accurate. I might essentially damaged into her room while she changed into naked, scared the shit out of her, and now I had a boner to pinnacle it off. High quality. Edward, what the fuck are you doing here? She demanded, and that I make up. That white sheet left little to the creativeness, and it was hard to consider the motive I got here right here inside the first place, not to mention give an explanation for it right so I did not look like a pervert. Don't worry, I simply it is 3 o'clock Rose wishes Emmett sent me. I subsequently decided I would blame Emmett since he ought to do no incorrect in Bella's eyes. She'd likely provide Emmett a disapproving look, however they'd be joking and giggling 2 minutes later. Oh my god, she muttered beneath her breath, her cheeks flaming now. Flip around while I am getting first rate. I did as she asked, however noticed I may want to nonetheless see her within the replicate in front of me. I additionally observed her ogling my ass after I became around. In case you try to peek, I'll homicide you, Edward Cullen. I used to be approximately to inform her I should see just as she dropped the sheets, but wow. All mind in my thoughts stopped the moment I saw her stunning body once more. All of the blood in me had rushed right down to one location, and I was thankful my denims should hide my trouble nicely. She hadn't modified one bit, her breasts were perky and luscious. Her smakeuple behind become as tight and ideal, while her long milky legs seemed as tender and welcoming as ever. She become sincerely breathtaking. I hadn't been with absolutely everyone in years, nor had I felt the need to be. However, after one examined Bella in all her naked glory, I started to starvation for her in a way that I concept have been extinguished in me entirely. My whole frame turned into burning for her, and my pants had makeup increasingly more tight. All her jumping around to get her garments on did not anything to assist my hassle. However, subsequently, whilst she managed to get her blouse over her head, I let loose a breath of relief. If she had kept leaping around like that, I would have got here in my pants, and I hadn't completed that considering the fact that excessive college. Okay, I'm respectable, she introduced. Oh, infant, you are a whole lot extra than respectable, I wanted to inform her. I turned around, my hard-on nonetheless painful, and she seemed to word there was something makeup, no pun s make makeup, because she quirked an eyebrow even as I desperately tried to compose myself. Are you okay? She requested. I am the best I've ever been, I spoke back and found out my mistake too overdue. I genuinely had a one music thoughts in that moment. I imply, I am the quality I have ever been. First rate, I repeated, mentally smacking myself in the head for being such an idiot. Okay, besides, you stated Emmett dispatched you. Why? She asked, and I needed to take a minute to try and do not forget my motive for arising right here within the first region. Ah, Rosalie, that's right. Rose desired to understand in case you were alive and sent Emmett to get you. However, his pal from university, Tyler, flew in today and he wanted to satisfy him at the airport, so I said I would come and wake you makeup. Wait, how did you get into my room? She inquired, her eyebrow raised in query. Shit, if I failed to look like a psycho before, I'm virtually going to appear like one now. I can also have lied to the residence keeping body of workers and said that it was my room. I admitted, my face heating makeup a chunk in embarrassment. It sincerely did look bizarre, and Emmett changed into going to kill me whilst he came returned from picking makeup Tyler. Properly, I am alive, so, will you inform Rose that I will be down in half of an hour once I take a bath? I nodded, thankful she wasn't screaming at me or calling the police. Now appeared like a bad time to bring makeup the entire. Are you happy with Jake? Components. I determined I'd depart it until the practice session dinner this night. Anyone could be having an excellent time, and I'd upload it into our verbal exchange smoothly after I had no longer just visible her bare. Thanks for coming to wake me makeup, by using the manner. She thanked me, and that I smiled, happy she failed to hate me any more than she already did, before I left the room. As I left Bella's room, I stuck Rosalie coming down the corridor. What are you doing makeup right here? She tangled up, her eyes darting to Bella's door. A003E33992 A1E424449A037E2560BF2. I smiled. Elevators. They continually appeared to take forever. Particularly whilst your sister and her husband are making out together, whilst status beside you and forcing you to witness it, regardless of how plenty you bitch. Edward, we will do something we want. I do not have Evelyn with me this night, so if I want to stick my tongue down Jazz's throat, I'm able to. She growled and Jasper chuckled. Sorry, Edward, you know how being pregnant makes her. No longer that I'm complaining. Jasper winked earlier than going backtrack to Alice's lips. Please prevent it. This is a $200 in shape. If I am getting ill on it, you are buying dry cleaning. Something. This is our floor anyway. Later, Edward, Alice called as she and Jasper exited the elevator, leaving me to sigh in alleviation now that they have been long past and I didn't ought to be subjected to that anymore. I used to be alone for actually seconds whilst the elevator stopped again and the doors slid open, handiest for an angel to appear. Bella stood before me in a dark get-dressed which had glints of sparkles in it, shimmering in the mild as she moved. It showed her long legs perfectly. Her hair became makeup, even though I loved whilst it turned into down nonetheless. She seemed like heaven and hell wrapped makeup in one. Bella, I whispered, unable to manipulate my voice. You look great. First rate, in fact did her no justice. She become past fantastic, there wasn't even words to explain how devastatingly stunning she regarded. Not too shabby yourself, she stated, nudging me gently with her elbow. Then she moved as a ways far from me as viable. Did she definitely hate me that a great deal? So, Gucci huh? Yeah, I made Alice pick out outfits for me because I desired you to look me and assume I regarded accurate despite the fact that I am a drug addict who is being hunted by a psychopathic killer. Oh yeah, you're cognize Alice. I virtually don't care approximately designer manufacturers. She may want to dress me in a in shape from Walmart for all I care, so long as I've garments on my lower back it is all proper. The doors of the elevator opened and we both stepped out. Our conversation were smooth and that I clearly desired to know more approximately that Jake guy she turned into seeing. I tried to approach the issue lightly. So, whilst's Jake getting right here? It sounded plenty smoother in my mind. She seemed hesitant to reply. He's now not coming. We're no longer seeing every different anymore. A person make up there still appreciated me. It changed into over among them. She would not be marrying him. She wouldn't be having his children. She wouldn't be in love with him anymore. It felt like a weight have been lifted from me, however then I remembered how selfish I used to be being. Bella probably cherished him, and because it changed into over, she became probably hurting and right here I used to be appearing like a jerk. I'm sorry, I instructed her, as convincingly as I could manipulate. She called me out on it even though. No, you are no longer. I failed to want to deceive her once more. No, I am now not. Straight away after dinner, the celebration became in full swing. Most people had been guffawing and dancing. I, however, sat within the corner drinking for most of the nighttime, handiest coming out when my mother asked me to bop together with her. For the complete night, my eyes stayed trained on Bella. She became so beautiful. Emmett and Rosalie had claimed each different at the dance ground together with the other make-uples makeup. So when a gradual tune got here on and I noticed Bella standing on my own, I knew it changed into now or never. May I have this dance, Ms. Swan? I requested as I came makeup behind her. She turned to me with a twinkle of mischief in her eyes. I don't know, she spoke back and that I frowned for a moment, thinking she turned into going to turn me down. Can you maintain your fingers to yourself? She teased and I chuckled, whisking her onto the dance floor. I promise not anything, I laughed, as I pulled her body in the direction of mine, even though saved a decent distance. Having her in my fingers become like something out of a dream, or a protracted awaited homecoming. This turned into where I belonged. My heart became beating erratically from being so close to her, and all I may want to do become stare into her captivating brown eyes. I still wanted to know if her existence became satisfying and full of pleasure. I wanted her, no, wished her to be glad. It turned into the handiest way I may want to truly permit her cross. I have ignored this, Bella. I have missed you, but you do seem glad. I am satisfied. Why wouldn't I be? I've the whole thing I wanted, she instructed me. However, Bella had never been a make-up liar. She wasn't happy and that I did that. Guilt washed over me and I desired her to hit me, to shout at me and threaten to kill me for all I did to her. For eliminating her life due to the fact I wasn't sturdy sufficient to combat away Irina or Tanya, but she didn't do any of that, because Bella was kinder and more potent than every person I knew. She deserved the entirety and yet got nothing for it. It is properly, I choked out, knowing the truth however understanding it would not help if I faced her in her lie. You appearance stunning by using the manner. She definitely did. You stated that already. She spoke back and I smiled, wanting nothing greater than to kiss her then and there. I know. Can also I reduce in, Edward? A voice from behind spat my name. I looked to see a tall, darkish-skinned man evident at Bella and me. She seemed to recognize him and I found out the man should have been Jake. It fucking killed me. He had a proper to preserve her, after I didn't. However, I knew if I had a hazard of keeping her, I would by no means permit her pass. Reluctantly, I found out what become fine for Bella and I released her. I used to be lucky to have even gotten a dance from her. I was giving her again to the person she cherished. That guy wasn't me anymore. I needed to be given that sooner or later. Then after I'd walked away, I became returned to look them, their lips smashed in opposition to one another as Jacob stared immediately into my eyes. His eyes stated the entirety as his mouth closed over Bella's, "You've got misplaced." And that I had. I'd lost the entirety. Disclaimer. Stephenie Meyer owns Twilight. Chapter Makeup 5 EPOV. It is a pleasing day to begin once more. It is a pleasing day for a white wedding ceremony. Emmett screeched on the top of his lungs and that I cursed Billy Idol for ever recording that tune. To be sincere, I was glad Emmett changed into playing himself. It turned into the happiest day of his lifestyles and he deserved each kindness for what he'd performed for me in the beyond. He was the high-quality brother I could have requested for. Okay, we get it. You are getting married, however permits shop that brilliant voice of yours till karaoke time whilst I have make up lots greater alcohol. My dad instructed him and I burst out giggling. Emmett glared at me. Shut it, Eddie. I am a tremendous singer. Rosie stated so, he replied smugly. And mother stated I'd be president sooner or later. I added and my dad high-fived me. Appropriate one, he applauded. Jerks, Emmett mumbled. Emmett changed into still in his boxers and socks. Even though we had very little time to get to the church, he acted as though he didn't have a care inside the world. Whereas I was already dressed and expecting him, so I should pass see Bella. I desired to make sure she became truly very well after the entire Jacob debacle the day prior to this. I was severely considering going to his house and breaking his face, so that he would not be capable of force some other kiss on any woman ever again, mainly Bella. Come on. Get your ass in that tuxedo otherwise you won't be marrying Rose on time. I warned him and on that risk he appeared to get his act together. We did subsequently make it to the church with time to spare. What amazed me turned into that Emmett didn't seem in any respect frightened status at the just anticipating Rose. He changed into cool, calm and gathered. He knew everything would work out and he'd be satisfied. Rose, on the other hand, changed into completely freaking out. Oh shit balls, I am freaking fearful, she admitted, as she fidgeted and squeezed the life out of the plants in her arms. I were inside the room for about 5 seconds earlier than I noticed Bella, and what a awesome sight she turned into to behold. Her dress changed into a champagne color. Do not inquire from me how I even recognized that, and it matched the tiny ribbon that went round Rose's waist. Her curled hair become cascading down her back, the way I loved it, and the get-dressed clung to all of the proper components of her body. My mind went back to the day after I noticed her bare frame in that reflect. Get manage of yourself or you may be waddling down that aisle with a painful erection. Turning my interest again to Rosalie, I remembered my father's advice to me on my wedding ceremony day. Don't worry Edward, just take into account that it is Bella coming down the aisle for you and you'll be quality. I recalled how virtually nervous I used to be on my wedding day. But once I saw Bella stroll down the aisle to me, her white get-dressed flowing and her eyes twinkling, all the one's issues become the only for me. I had always recognized that. Don't worry Rosalie, simply take into account that it's Emmett at the makeup of the aisle expecting you and you'll be nice. I confident her as I came to take my place beside Bella, who turned into doing her excellent to disregard me. Rosalie breathed earlier than she began chanting, just Emmett and me, simply Emmett and me, simply Emmett and me. The doorways swung open and music filled the church as we started out our march. I knew by using the look on Bella's face that she was worried approximately falling. Plus, she did appearance as a substitute unsteady in the one's heels I presented makeup her my arm and even though she appeared hesitant to take it, she latched onto me and the spark ignited. I puzzled if she felt it too. Whenever she touched me it regarded my whole body came alive. It was the strangest sensation and that I desired to feel it greater. I desired her entire body pressed in opposition to me. When we might reach the give-make-makeup of the aisle, I reluctantly allow her go so we ought to take our places on both aspect of the church. Through the whole rite though, I could not forestall staring at her, thinking about how it felt while she touched me, how beautiful she become and what kind of I truly craved her. She was like a drug to me. I wanted my restoration of her presence. I also realized the genuine volume of my loneliness. I should crave her as a lot as I liked, however she wasn't mine to take. Applause or makeup did round us and my Bella bubble popped because the ceremony ended. Rose and Emmett had come to shake our hands earlier than they have been claimed by the gang of guests and driven into welcoming fingers. We exited the church to get to the hotel however earlier than Emmett were given inside the automobile. He took my arm and whispered, "If whatever takes place at the reception, inform me. Don't allow yourself down once more." I might not, I promised, and he nodded in recognition before going lower back to reclaim his bride. Charlie Swan. He hadn't changed a chunk. He was nevertheless as horrifying as ever. Bella had warned me to live far away from him. However, he'd been by her facet continuously the complete night, unbeknownst to Bella. I make Uppo's makeup he changed into preserving an eye on her due to the fact he knew I used to be right here. But, had inner know how my mom instructed me that he become leaving early due to the fact his female friend, Sue Clearwater's daughter, Leah, had damaged her arm and Charlie wanted to head home early to see if she and Sue have been all right. That makeup once he left, I might have all of the time within the world to dance with Bella. The trouble turned into, I had spent years without her and that time apart had made me more than impatient. I desired to bounce with Bella now. I decided that getting abuse from Charlie might be worth it if I were given to hold her now. Significantly, this became borderline obsession, however that is what Bella does to me. Charlie turned into dancing, pretty awkwardly, with Bella, and I was about to chicken out and await my flip, once I heard her say, "Dad, I'm exceptional with Edward right here, certainly. There may be no need to move domestic. Pass home." He turned into trying to reduce out my Bella time. No, I couldn't permit that happen. I walked makeup at the back of him. "May additionally I reduce in, sir?" I asked and Bella's eyes widened in a "what the fuck are you doing" form of way. "Dad," Bella said in warning, but Charlie took no notice. "No, you could not cut in Edward," Charlie commenced, and that I felt a little uneasy being so near him as he spoke. The man owned guns and my revel in with them hadn't been desirable. Makeup. "Unless you want me to kick your ass, I advise you live far from my little woman. You've hurt her already and I'll be damned if I can help you do it again." My legs had been beginning to experience a bit like Jell-O and I used to be kind of regretting my decision now not to wait till Charlie had left. But still, if he became looking to take Bella away early, I'd by no means forgive myself if I did not try to cling on to every little moment I had left with her. Who knows, the next time I noticed her she might be married with kids. "Dad," she scolded him before adding, "it's simplest to dance and that I realize you are looking to protect me, but what happened between us is none of your commercial enterprise." Charlie obviously failed to like Bella's response and turned crimson-faced with fury. "Bells, that is the asshole who changed into unfaithful to you for 8 months. I cannot permit that move." Snapshots of Irina and Tanya got here flooding into my thoughts and I needed to fight to live in control and no longer close down like I usually did whilst that took place. My hands shook and beads of sweat collected on my forehead, however I managed to manipulate it and compose myself. Charlie trudged off to go and vent to my father as I accrued Bella in my palms. I notion he changed into going to kill me. I clearly assume I just shit myself, I joked, seeking to lighten the mood. God, I continually knew he was frightening, but that turned into, "It is your very own damned fault. I advised you in particular to keep away from him. Did you watch? I was kidding when I told you he might kill you." She asked angrily, and I could not stop the smile that unfolded on my face at how lovable she changed into whilst she was mad. "I figured I'd take the threat if it's makeup keeping you for any duration of time," I answered genuinely and needed to combat the urge to press my lips against hers. They seemed so smooth and welcoming, however I knew the simplest issue I would receive if I tried became an ass-kicking and a restraining order. I wasn't aware I had added us nearer collectively till I felt her chest pressed makeup close against mine. It seemed as although I was now not on top of things of my frame. The way you look today is indescribable via the manner, genuinely, I desired her to apprehend how breathtaking she changed into to me. Edward, she breathed, pronouncing my name like a plea. I ought to see what she desired to mention as clear as day on her face. I have missed you, but I can't. Don't, I objected, my eyes in go back telling her, I need you, take me. All that I'm is yours. Just be satisfied here with me, proper now. The room full of human beings disappeared and makeup it changed into best us. I might forgotten the entirety but her. Her odor, her voice, the feel of her pressed in opposition to me, it became all I knew in those few moments. I can't, Bella, I need you. She had bewitched me, taken over my heart, body and soul as she always had. She owned me. My eyes closed and I may want to sense my body lean towards her. Her breathing changed into sluggish and measured, deep with lust as mine turned into. Maybe she wanted me as a good deal as I desired her. Maybe she felt the equal pull I used to be feeling too. The one that linked us to every other, and pulled us again together while we have been apart. We were so close. My backside lip touched hers till reality suddenly got here crashing back. I'm sorry, she choked out, scrambling away earlier than jogging off. I was in surprise for a moment and I failed to make up I may want to recognize what simply happened. I had almost kissed Bella. She had nearly kissed me too. There was desire for us. I needed to move after her. I sprinted to the elevators, however when I failed to see her, I knew she was either already in her room or she had taken the steps. So I went, strolling makeup the stairwell with the whole thing I had until I noticed her, shoes in hand, mascara smudged around her eyes and jogging down her cheeks. Bella held makeup her hand earlier than I may want to even open my mouth. Something you're going to say, don't, she warned however I didn't concentrate. She needed to recognize I wasn't looking for a few brief fling, that I might never deliberately harm her. I most effective desired to be with her. I refuse Bella. I refuse to consider I've lost you forever. I am going to work so difficult to win you lower back. I advised you this before, your words imply shit to me now. She roared and I pressed her in opposition to the concrete wall, wanting her to forestall screaming and observe the sincerity in my eyes as I spoke to her. I understand. Consider me I recognize. I failed you before, however I have grown and I've modified. I am now not the identical fool I used to be years ago Bella, and that I need you. Every day I am going without you I am demise interior, I want you for you to live to tell the tale. Please, she shook her head as if to mention, it's not really worth it. Please, I am not asking you to marry me or fall head over heels in love with me once more. I best need a chance, because I have located lifestyles means not anything without you in it. I simplest need a danger to win returned your believe. Her eyes looked at me closely and I used to be on the point of move drop to my knees and beg her to allow me prove I was well worth the danger. As a substitute though, earlier than I could even check in a change in her expression, her lips have been on mine, frantic with need and lust. I was a goner. Everything in my head flew out as fireworks shot across my imaginative and prescient and my arms tangled in her hair. Our bodies pressed towards every different, fitting perfectly as if we were made for one another. Soon our tongues swirled with the every others and I moaned embarrassingly loud on the taste of her. She tasted like strawberries, sunshine, champagne and pure Bella. I was developing tough as we grappled onto every different, our mouths combating for dominance. I couldn't help it. It changed into the impact she had on me and that I knew she had to notice it by using now, it turned into rubbing against her belly. Her moans grew louder as properly and I fought difficult to regain my control and now not hump her like some crazed animal. Then Bella broken my control considerably. Bedroom Edward, she ordered in a breathy and lust-crammed voice. She wanted to have intercourse. Already, are you sure Bella? We are going clearly speedy. I puzzled. Due to the fact that I desired our courting to paintings and I notion if we rushed into sex, it'd complicate the entirety. Do you need me or now not? She asked boldly, as her lips trailed down my throat, sucking on my Adam's apple and making me whimper with need. How could she even ask that? I had in no way wanted all people so much in my entire life. So many times tonight I had been close to putting her over my shoulder and dragging her away so I should ravish her. It became hard to assume instantly when she become doing naughty matters to me, and so my answer failed to pop out as clean as I'd have hoped it would sound. Of path I do it's simply I need to do proper through you. Bella didn't appear to like my answer, and part of me did not both. I'm telling you, take me. She ordered in the sexiest voice I might ever heard. With her words, my control vanished and something took over me. I swept her makeup in my hands, her legs wrapped around my waist as I claimed her lips once more on this all-eating need for her. She licked, nipped and kissed my neck, lips and everywhere she could attain as I carried her to her room. I struggled to open the door whilst what I in reality desired to do became slam her in opposition to the wall and have my way along with her. But Bella deserves to be worshipped, and that is what I am going to do. After I sooner or later controlled to get the door open, and its interior, I found the bed was a ways away, so in the meantime we should make do with the wall. I like you so much, I always have, I managed to breath out, in a husky voice as I suckled at the tops of her creamy breasts, delighting inside the moans she made and how her body spoke back to me. I stripped off a number of my layers, my blouse and jacket, trying to feel my pores and skin pressed in opposition to Bella's as soon as I may want to. My palms had a thoughts in their own as they undid the zipper on her dress. The second one my lips were not on hers, she stood makeup and allow her get dressed fall to the floor, leaving her in not anything however a couple of lace panties and fuck me heels. So stunning. Since the day I had woken her makeup, I'd been dreaming about all of the grimy matters I could do to her, and now I had her, barren on my own in a bedroom. I used to be going to take benefit of it. Picking her makeup once more so her legs had been wrapped around me, I took her nipple into my mouth and nipped, sucked and licked to my heart's content. Her heated middle rubbed against my abs and I groaned at the thoughts of what changed into to come. After I became my attention to her other nipple and bit down, Bella decided she'd had enough of my torture. Edward, please, she begged, and I flew over to the bed, collapsing on pinnacle of her, my erection pressed against her heat center. Why do I nevertheless have my pants on? Off, Bella ordered, reading my thoughts. She virtually didn't want to inform me 2 times. They were gone in a heartbeat and my cock stood tall and proud between us. For a moment I used to be concerned I'd have an episode all through sex with Bella, but then I remembered how safe I felt together with her and the way she made the entirety higher. I bent down, strolling my hands makeup the length of her thighs till I had a preserve on the material on her hips. Am I able to take them off? I asked, wanting to make certain I had her complete permission earlier than I did something. She nodded and lifted her hips to allow me to remove her panties. The final barrier was long gone among us, and shortly I would be again to wherein I belonged, united with the female I loved. She started out to dispose of her shoes subsequent, but I stalled her palms earlier than she could do anything. No, the shoes live on. She did not seem to thoughts. I kissed her with wild abandon, thanking her another time for giving me the honor of being with her, as I then placed myself at her front. I was approximately to plunge myself into her when sense got here speeding into my head. Safety, I asked, since an unplanned pregnancy became not an awesome manner to start a dating. Backside right drawer, she rasped, and that I raised an eyebrow, understanding the condoms had been complimentary, however trying to see that stunning blush spread down her body. Sure sufficient, she flushed, her cheeks and chest glowing a mild scarlet. They may be complimentary, you have some too. I started to snicker, however stopped dead whilst she yanked the foil wrapper out of my hand. She had the cutest look of attention on her face as she took the foil in her mouth and ripped it, pulling the contents out. Her hand grasped my erection and I gasped at her touch. I used to be truly aroused, so I knew I needed to take my time as soon as I were given in her or I wasn't going to closing. She lightly rolled the condom down the period of my cock and that I instinctively bucked into her hand. It were a long time I couldn't help it. Suddenly, it hit me. This changed into it. I was approximately to make like to Bella. Not anything changed into preventing me. I would carried out the not possible. We were going to be collectively once more. You're certain? I managed to choke out, my frame wanting her desperately to say yes, however the whole thing else wanting her to mention no, to tell me this wasn't best approximately intercourse, that she wanted me. Sure, she answered, and it turned into bittersweet. She needed me on a few level, however no longer simply on the extent I wanted her. Nevertheless, this changed into a stepping stone. The physical should add to the affection issue of our relationship, and I might take something she became willing to present to me. I love you, I whispered, so low I am no longer even sure she heard me, earlier than I pushed into her. Her warmth and wetness enveloped me and that I groaned, pushing myself as deep into her as I should go. I kissed every surface of her frame within my reach, wanting her to feel how lots I needed her in each pass and contact of my body. I pulled out slowly and then, an extended groan tore from my chest as I driven returned, her hips assembly mine and creating the most delicious friction. My body advised me to take her quicker, pound into her with all my energy and ravish her till she milked me dry. However, Bella deserved a lot more, so I stored my tempo sluggish and regular, additionally trying to take pleasure in this long-awaited second. Are you okay? Bella asked breathlessly. I slightly understood what she was announcing. The sensation of being in her was making it difficult to think, let alone form a coherent sentence. I need to enjoy it. I don't want fuck this to make up. I responded through gritted teeth as I allow my head fall into the crook of her neck, breathing in her scent as I took her frame. It changed into getting to be too much for me to take, and despite the fact that I wanted it to last all the time, I was going to come quickly. I needed to choose makeup the pace if I used to be going to deliver Bella to completion with me. My thrusts have become faster, Bella's moans louder, and that I could inform she turned into near. Her arms started to snake down her frame, coming down to where we were joined, and that I hissed. I desired to be the one to get her off. She would get off with my body alone. I pinned her arms above her head as I persisted to pound into her tight channel. I'll make you come, simplest me. I ground out. I need it, she begged, but I didn't budge. As a substitute I picked make up the tempo, thrusting so tough I was sure we were going make up the headboard. I ought to experience my orgasm constructing in me, and that I knew I did not have long left. So listening to Bella scream, "Oh yes Edward so near," changed into like telling an infant you would just bought a toy store. Eventually I gave into my urges to take her with all I had. I picked make up her legs, wrapped them round my waist and plunged relentlessly into her tight, velvety heat. I may want to experience the moisture from her pussy dripping onto my thighs. I used to be so deep internal her that I couldn't forestall my eyes from rolling back into my head with each motion of my hips. I wanted to make this perfect for her. To expose her that Jacob ought to by no means make her experience the way I might make her experience. Only I'm able to ever make you sense like this, I growled, the dominant and possessive side of me make up. Bella seemed to like it, because I ought to feel her body tremble and begin to tighten around me. Come for me Bella, come on my cock. Her tight channel squeezed round me as she convulsed with satisfaction. I gave in to the tightening in my groin, roaring her call as I went over the brink. Stars shot round me as the entirety I had spilled out of me and into the condom. I had by no means earlier than felt such excessive pleasure, and I was actually gasping for air whilst it became over. I fell limp on Bella, attempting desperately to preserve as lots of my weight off her as feasible. However, it became tough whilst I was barely in control of my body. Whilst my limbs failed to experience like Jello and I was capable of circulate, I eliminated the condom, tying it in a knot and throwing it into the rubbish, before I pulled Bella into my hands and then onto my chest. Her respiration turned into nonetheless loopy and her heart was flying like a humming fowl's wings. I figured singing changed into an amazing way to get her to sleep. I determined on James Blunt's tune, Excessive. Stunning sunrise, lighting make up the shore for me. There is not anything else in the world I'd alternatively make up and see. With you, beautiful dawn, I am simply chasing time once more. Idea I'd die a lonely guy. In limitless night, but now I am high. Running wild among all of the stars above. Sometimes it's hard to consider you recollect me. She became asleep in a deep end of minutes. My making a song constantly seemed to lull Bella into a peaceful shut-eye, and I was more than willing to sing all night time long if it made her happy. I could not seem to forestall touching her as she slept. She looked so ideal. My fingers combed through her chocolate curls as I sang, and my mouth handiest closed when it was to region a smooth kiss on her stunning face. It became tough to agree with. She became right here in my arms once more. Forever's now not lengthy sufficient, Bella. It had been 8 months since Edward got the news that he would walk again, and while he could walk now, he was still working on regaining full balance and strength. Sometimes his legs gave out from under him, other times he depended entirely on his wheelchair to help him get around. Still, I was so incredibly proud of him. I couldn't help but think of how lucky we'd been. It had been a close call, one which Edward was determined to put behind him. It was also something we would never forget. But while I also wanted to put the past behind us and move forward in life, I didn't want to move at too fast a pace. Edward wanted to go double time, forcing himself to be better in order to give me what he thought I deserved. He wanted everything now that he knew it was achievable, and he wasn't going to stop until he had it. I was okay with that. In fact, I was more than okay. I was ecstatic at the prospect of a proper life with him. But since all that with James had happened, I knew I could never risk Edward's well-being again. Anything too strenuous could hurt him while he was still weak, and then he'd be back to where he started. But of course, he was sure he was strong enough for everything. I sighed. You're not strong enough. I won't risk hurting you. You're not going to hurt me. I'm not made out of porcelain, Edward replied, still trying to get me to give in. He snuggled up closer to me on my side of the bed, leaning on his elbow as he trailed kisses up my shoulder. I shook him off, tired of arguing with him. The thing was, I wanted what he was asking more than anything. It had been so very long, but risking his safety wasn't worth it, so I had to be the responsible one out of the two of us. We're not having sex until you're fully healed and the doctor says it's safe. He groaned and rolled his eyes before flopping back down on his back. For the 5th time, the doctor said it was okay as long as I don't put strain on my back or stand. That means we can have sex, you'll just have to be on top. My eyes narrowed at him. Oh, and riding you wouldn't be putting strain on your back. His eyes darkened at my choice of words and he seemed to daydream for a moment. I think I had an idea what his daydream was about. I clicked my fingers in front of his face and he seemed to snap out of it. Bella, I'm so fucking horny. I nearly lost it yesterday when you bent down to get the remote and I saw the red thong you were wearing. That's how horny I am. Please, baby, I promise you won't break me. We'll be so careful. I huffed and crossed my arms over my chest. You're acting as if I haven't given you anything in the past 6 months. If anyone should be horny, it's me. In all fairness, it wasn't like he hadn't tried to repay the favors I'd given him. I just wasn't really bothered that much about getting off afterward. I like to think that I was waiting until I can enjoy it properly with him, when we could both reach completion together, looking into each other's eyes. He smirked crookedly and was back by my side in an instant. Are you? Yes. Fuck me before I die of sexual frustration. My mind screamed. No, I'm not. I lied. His smirk stayed in place as his fingers skimmed my side, down to my stomach before slyly slipping under the covers. Are you sure? His fingertips gently glided over my skin until they reached the cotton of my panties. Because I could make you feel so good, Bella. Want me to show you? I was quite sure if I bit down any harder on my lip, I would draw blood. He had no idea how much I wanted to feel him. Soon I was getting caught up in the moment and, as much as I tried to hold it in, I whimpered. Damn him. I knew it. You want me as bad as I want you. Tell me, Bella. Tell me you want me. I feared if I opened my mouth, I wouldn't be able to stop the moans that were threatening to spill. But I had to stop this before things got out of hand. No, I shouted and jumped off the bed. Edward, we're not having sex until you are fully healed. Bella, he began to argue. And that's final. End of discussion. I stormed off out of the room. He was much too tempting to be in the same room with now. I knew what he was after. And also he knew my weaknesses. I sighed and mentally cursed Esme and Carlisle for making Edward so damn beautiful that I couldn't resist him. I knew I couldn't go back to bed without him pestering me, especially when I wanted it so bad. So I resigned myself to the fact I'd be sleeping alone, headed to the guest room and slept there. During the night, I felt eyes watching me. My eyelids inched open and I sprung up in alarm to see a dark figure loomed over the other side of the bed, looking directly at me. I knew who it was immediately due to the shadow's head having a million different points sticking out everywhere. Edward slid in the bed silently and snuggled up to my side before pulling me into his arms. I'm sorry, he whispered and kissed my temple. I sighed. You know I'm just worried about you getting hurt, right? I know, but I see the things we used to have and all the things that are possible yet again, and now I want them back. I want to be able to give you everything you give me and more. I placed my hand over his, which was resting on my hip. I love you, but for now, we're taking it easy. Okay. You won't hurt me, so I'm not giving up yet, He told me. And I love you too. And they say I'm the stubborn one, I grumbled in return before dozing off again. The next night Edward had gone out with Emmett and Jasper. I was feeling down and needed to vent, so I decided to call Rose. He's been constantly begging me to have sex, Rose. It's taken all I have in me not to fuck him like an animal right on the spot. Rose giggled on the other side of the phone. I don't see why you don't just give in to him. If he thinks he's strong enough, why not believe him? Or if he's wrong, let him learn the hard way, no pun intended. I sighed. I can't do that, Rose. I don't have it in me to watch him learn the hard way. Not after I've watched him suffer like he has already. I really think it would kill me. Bella, you're overreacting. If Edward says he's well enough for you to screw his brains out and you want it too, why not go for it? Why is it so hard to take his word? Because I already thought I lost him once and the pain it was unbearable. Knowing he was really hurt was horrible, but the waiting was, I have no words, but I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I couldn't go through that pain again. I won't let him either. I just can't. Rose, I admitted and looked down at the ground as I let Rose absorb the information. Our quick phone call had turned into a very deep conversation. Well, maybe you show. Bella. A deep voice from behind startled me. I dropped the phone in shock and spun around to see Edward standing behind me. His expression told me he'd just heard everything, though I prayed I was wrong. Taking the coward's way out, I hunkered down to grab the phone and avoided eye contact with him. Rose, I got to call you back. I'll talk to you later. I didn't wait for her response before hanging up, knowing she'd heard Edward's voice and would understand why I was so abrupt. Slowly, ever so slowly, I got up and met Edward's gaze. How much did you hear? He seemed to think about his answer carefully before speaking. Enough. Yeah, I nodded awkwardly. That's what I thought. Look, I tried. No, Bella, there's no, look, I'm sorry, in this conversation. He composed himself before he continued. If you have a problem between us, you come to me. You don't have to go blather our problems to Rosalie. She's my friend and I just had to vent. I know she's your friend, but do you know how much it fucking hurts that you told her instead of me? We're partners, not you and her. And if you're really worried and that's the reason you won't have sex with me, fine. I'm an adult. If you'd told me this and explained it, we could have worked on it, talked about it. I knew I was in the wrong. I should have spoken to him before venting to Rosalie. But I was stressed and tired, and instead of apologizing, I lashed out. You're an adult, really. Because this argument is so fucking childish. I can't speak to my friends now, is that what you're saying? He scoffed. Are you really twisting my words right now to make me the bad guy? Guilt flooded through me. He was right. I don't have to make you the bad guy. It's me who's the bad guy. You're always the good one. The words came out all wrong though, and the look of hurt that crossed his face was like a punch in the gut to me. To him my words had a different meaning. To him I'd just said, I don't have to make you the bad guy, you always are. You're going to play that card. He whispered, his expression defeated. I didn't mean it like that, I growled. He was silent as he looked at me for a moment, and then finally he sighed tiredly and closed his eyes. You know what? We'll talk about this in the morning. We're both tired and shouting isn't going to solve anything. Edward, I tried, grabbing his hand as he began to limp out of the room. We'll talk about it tomorrow. He kissed my head chastely, but it had no emotion behind it and I knew I'd really hurt him. You're in therapy tomorrow, I pointed out. Then we'll talk after, I promise. I love you. He was gone before I could even finish. I sat down at the kitchen table, running a hand through my hair in frustration. He was always so forthcoming when things were bothering him. I was always the one pestering him about the importance telling each other things and working as a team. I was such a fucking hypocrite. I'd messed up. It seemed to be happening a lot lately. Fuck. Edward hadn't spoken to me at all the next day unless you count a 6-word text he'd sent me. With Emmett. Going to therapy after. Edward. He'd been asleep when I was leaving for work and not in when I'd gotten home. So here I was trying to busy myself around the house so I could try and think of anything but him. He was supposed to be home at 7 and just as I was about to call him, I couldn't help but cringe at myself. What am I doing? He's only 20 minutes late. Am I really that clingy now? I flopped down onto the couch behind me. No wonder he was angry. I'd been so crazy lately. One moment I was needlessly clingy, another mindlessly angry, and the next loving. My mood swings had to be giving him whiplash. A key jingled in the door, but I stayed where I was. Maybe Edward was getting sick of me. I couldn't deny that we had been a little on edge with each other lately and avoiding topics that made us uncomfortable. But I'd attributed that to us struggling through Edward's healing process and stressing over the future. "Bella, I'm home," he called, and I laughed under my breath as I heard the familiar clanging of keys. Some habits of his never changed. "Bella." In the living room, his heavy footsteps slowly lead him into the room where he spotted me on the couch. In his hands was a big bouquet of tulips. He handed them to me and accompanied them with a breathtaking kiss. "I'm sorry for fighting with you." "No, I was being a bitch, as usual." "I'm sorry," I told him and welcomed his lips again. "Let's just move on." He tried, but I cut him off. "No, we can't keep moving on from stuff like this without hashing it out. Let's talk about it, because it's ignoring the cracks in the ice that leads to us both drowning." He smiled confusedly. "Not that I'm complaining, but when did this realization come to you?" "About 5 minutes ago, when I thought about how wrong I was to snap at you." He sat down on the couch with me and pulled me into his arms. "I overreacted, but it wouldn't be a bad thing to talk about why you don't want to be intimate yet." I groaned internally. "I meant talk about the whole me betraying your trust thing, not the sex thing." "Bella, come on, we have to talk about it." "Fine," I grumbled, "but you already heard what I said to Rosalie. What more is there to say?" "The truth," he replied, caressing my cheek with his hand. "I know there's more to it than just the fear of hurting me." He was wrong. There wasn't, was there? "Well, maybe. Yeah, I guess there could be one other thing." I mumbled, my cheeks flushing scarlet. "You can tell me." His deep eyes held my gaze and for some reason gave me the strength I needed to tell, although I was still a tad hesitant. "It's stupid. I don't care. I'm not ready. It's just I want you. I really do, but even after all this time, I'm still in shock. And on top of that, if I hurt you, I'm afraid I'll shut down all over again." Edward nodded his head, absorbing the words as I said them. "I understand, and I'll wait as long as you need. Why do I sense a but coming?" He smiled. "But maybe you should seek professional help to deal with things. Lord knows I'd be lost without Oliver Garandy. I really thought I'd been fine, if not shaken a lot, by the whole James thing. But all I'd really been focused on was how close I'd come to losing Edward. I hadn't given a second thought to the fact I'd not only witnessed a killing, but I'd almost been the person who'd carried it out. Maybe Edward was right. What had I got to lose? "I think you're right. I'll look into it." "How did it go?" Edward asked after he home in from his session with Oliver. "It was therapy." I shrugged. I had just finished my first week of therapy with my new therapist, Kebby, and while she was a nice woman, I was having trouble opening up to her. I wished I could go to Oliver like Edward did, but I couldn't since Edward was his patient. Kebby and I had only gone over the basics so far, what I was hoping to achieve with therapy and what I had gone through. It was weird telling someone who was practically a stranger about James and Edward. I was out of my comfort zone and I was really trying to open up, it just wasn't coming any easier. Edward leaned over and kissed my forehead, breathing in my scent as his arms encircled me and pulled me close. "It's always hard at first, but it comes easier if you keep at it. Promise me you'll give it a chance." I smiled meekly and nodded. "I will, I promise." "That's my girl. I'm so proud of you." "Proud of me? You knew you had some issues to work through, you accepted that, and now you're doing something about it. It took me 2 years of denial and you only a day to set up a session." "Thanks," I whispered and placed a kiss over his eyebrow. "I love you, always, and forever." Edward's nose skimmed along my neck and caused me to shiver. My pulse raced and my heart began to beat out of my chest. It was just the effect he had on me. Then his warm lips pressed against my skin, trailing them down till he hit my collarbone. I closed my eyes and concentrated on the feel of him. Without realizing it, I was on my back and he was above me, working his way down as he kissed the valley of my breasts. I was so glad I was wearing a V-neck. Our innocent kiss soon turned into something deeper. Although I heard a nagging voice in the back of my mind, I tried to push it away and gave back everything Edward was giving me. Kiss for kiss, thrust for thrust. Then, after one especially powerful thrust, His eyes squeezed shut and he gasped in pain, not the good kind of pain. What the fuck was I doing? Fuck. I gasped and pushed him off so I could help him. You're back. Oh my god, how could I have been so stupid? I knew this would happen. Bella, I'm fine. It didn't really hurt that bad. Come on, come back to me, he pleaded and opened his arms. Get real, Edward, you're hurt. I'm not going to. I can't believe you knew I didn't. I wasn't. We couldn't. I think I was having a panic attack because I was choking on my own words and gasping for air. Edward's hand pulled me so I was sitting on the couch and he rubbed my back soothingly as I broke down. Breathe, Bella, breathe. I hurt you, I cried as tears began to spill from my eyes. Holy shit, I was more fucked up than I thought I was. You didn't hurt me, it was my fault for being careless. I knew I was putting strain on my back and it was selfish and irresponsible of me to have let that happen. Don't cry, Angel, I love you and it's not your fault. If I lost you I couldn't live without you. Edward seemed to understand what I was saying and kissed the tears off my chest before he took my hand and placed it over his heart. You won't lose me, feel my heart beating, baby. It beats for you and because of you. I'm alive because you give me reason to live and fight. I'm not going anywhere without you. That seemed to calm me down a lot and after a while I seemed to pull myself together again. But that begged the question, what would happen the next time I broke down? I think I need to see Kebby more than 3 times a week. It had taken weeks for me to be at ease speaking with Kebby, to subsequently feel like I may be absolutely open along with her. However at ultimate, we had gotten there and it turned into time to speak about the whole cause I was right here within the first vicinity, the night of the birthday party. Kebby had commenced off smooth, asking how I felt whilst I used to be getting equipped, what Edward and that I did ahead. I blushed beet red when she requested me that, so I omitted the part where Edward and I had wild intercourse on the steps of his mother and father, residence. Finally though, we had been attending to the hard stuff. So Bella, how did you experience when you observed out James become Riley? I mean it must were a surprise, a chum grew to become to foe in a moment and then, Kebby, my therapist, trailed off. She flicked her long black hair over her shoulder as she spoke. He's lifeless, I completed for her. Glaringly it turned into a surprise to me. I could have never guessed in a million years that James was that unwell. I had been on my own with him so commonly and he may want to have killed me 10 times over. However, judging from what Edward advised me, I should not certainly had been amazed to find out how deranged he virtually became. So that you were greatly surprised and surprised? Kebby requested. That changed into it. Nicely. No, when he held up the gun, I breathed, shuddering on the memory of James keeping the barrel against Edward's forehead. At Edward, I bear in mind thinking, this is it. Edward's going to die and yet every other person is doing away with my all the time with him. You feared for Edward's protection most of all. Not even a tiny second of fear regarding your personal existence. I idea approximately it for a second. I remembered the dark damp basement as James stepped into the light and removed the vivid metal weapon from his jacket. But no longer as soon as turned into I involved that I is probably in the firing line. All I take into account questioning was that Edward become shoving me in the back of him while all I wanted to do became reverse our positions and guard him far from the chance. No, I felt like if I lost him, I'd die anyway. So what turned into the factor of being afraid for my very own existence when the whole lot I had become there, in chance, proper in front of me? Kebby jotted notes down in her notebook before coming return to me with any other question. Am I able to ask what it turned into like for you when Edward turned into shot? I sucked in a strangled breath. This became something I could not endure to consider, let alone communicate of. You could do it, Bella. I realize you can, Kebby recommended. I exhaled and played the memories that had plagued my goals for weeks in the medical institution, looking ahead to Edward to awaken. Whilst it happened, it became like gradual motion. 1 second he was looking to rile James up to offer me a couple of minutes to get away, then the subsequent he changed into in front of me mendacity in a pool of his very own blood. My hand fidgeted on my lap as I recalled that dreaded day. Then I spoke to him and he became so weak. And after 2 minutes, even though it felt like a lifetime, he just went limp. I do not forget Nahuel looking at me with such pity and his eyes said it all, he's long past. He's now not lifeless, I chanted and wailed into Ben's shoulder. He's now not lifeless. No heartbeat. If we do not hurry, we're going to lose him absolutely. A paramedic shouted over his dead body. Paramedics were shouting and everybody changed into pulling me far from him. However, I didn't need to leave him. I couldn't. All of them concept he became useless, and I knew I was the most effective person who had any wish left. I used to be scared that if I left him, I trailed off as my throat closed up and my eyes packed with tears. No, Edward, relax, they are right here to assist. So am I. They may do all they could to save him. I took a moment to accumulate myself and attempt push back the reminiscences that had been haunting me whilst Kebby surpassed me a tissue. The ready became the worst, understanding there has been a danger that he won't make it out alive, and that I knew if he became going to die, he wouldn't have desired to go like that. He might have desired his circle of relatives surrounding him instead of strangers prodding and poking at him. I wanted to make certain if I lost him, he would as a minimum die in peace and with dignity, but I wouldn't have been capable of even get that for him. That was the most excruciatingly terrible time of my lifestyles, and I'm so terrified if he gets hurt, I'll have to go through it once more. Kebby looked at me with sympathy flooding her hazel eyes. The way she changed into searching at me became like she truly understood what I used to be announcing. It changed into as though to her I wasn't just every other patient, I used to be a pal who she desired to help. Watching for information on something that is so unpredictable, it really is so easily changeable, may be toughest element to undergo. Plenty took place that night time, Bella, and that I assume you shut yourself off after that event. Your brain made a cocoon around itself, a protective layer. Anything that you suppose constitutes a danger to Edward you might not even recall due to the fact you're so afraid of going lower back to that point when you had been affected the most with the aid of his pain. I let the information sink in earlier than dabbing my eyes with the tissue. She changed into right. I barely gave Edward's concept of being intimate a concept before I said no and stormed off like a child. Perhaps my brain turned into seeking to guard itself in any way it may. It wouldn't be the strangest factor it has ever came about. So what now? Do you give me Glad tablets until I'm geared up to open up? I requested, trying to lighten the temper. Kebby chuckled. Nope. No tablets required, I'm afraid. Darn it, I joked. Then what? She smiled tenderly, scooting ahead in her chair to take my hand in hers. We spoil open that cocoon. We speak about what it is that makes you shut off and we work through it. We can do this collectively, Bella. I squeezed her hand in mine. Thank you. Edward had no concept what become going to hit him. Dr. Kebby Amorta become exceptional. Exceptionally splendid. She'd completed a lot for me in this sort of brief amount of time. It have been a month and a 1-2 when you consider that we would open the cocoon and launch the butterfly, as she known as it. She simply made me experience like I wasn't doing this by myself, like getting higher wasn't a few chore I had to accomplish that I may be suitable sufficient for Edward. She made me stay up for our classes and made me feel like I was going for me, no longer absolutely everyone else. And Edward were one of these extraordinary help too. He become so supportive approximately the whole lot, and he'd been the one who had pushed me to go in the first few weeks when I was on the verge of quitting. Now here I used to be, within the skimpiest underwear I owned, waiting for Edward to return domestic. Ironic simply, he turned into virtually at remedy himself in the meanwhile, though he'd decreased his time with Oliver to handiest in the future per week considering that he felt like he'd conquer maximum of his demons. He did not have issues with addiction anymore and had devoted himself to physical therapy greater than something. It changed into additionally a manner for him to have male bonding time with Emmett, which I used to be happy they had due to the fact that their dating had been below pressure the beyond 2 years. Now they could move lower back to being brothers. Child, I am domestic. He known as his keys clanged down on the wooden desk and footsteps sounded in the residence. I am in right here, I called as I lay down in the center of the bed. I used to be quite sure you can see my nipples through the scrap of lace I used to be carrying and that I may have long passed overboard with the pedals at the mattress, but this turned into going to be our first time since the accident, so I did not care. What's occurring in wow? He gasped as his eyes roamed my, nearly bare, frame. I couldn't assist but bite down on my lip in anticipation. You are so Edward, he hummed, his eyes nevertheless no longer leaving my body. He seemed as though he became in a totally exclusive international. It is time to lose the pants. Fuck me, he breathed and frantically started out unbuckling his belt with shaky fingers. That turned into the plan. From that second on, Edward became a person possessed, and it pleased me to no give up to realize it turned into me who turned into doing that to him. Once we were joined, he warned me that we had all of the time within the world for sweet passionate love. However, for now, he needed me. It had just been too long for him, so that it will manipulate himself. Who become I to disclaim him? Plus, I loved every moment of what he turned into giving me. As Edward bared his body to me and vice versa, I knew nothing may want to harm us once more. Now not a terrible again or a crazed killer or even two psychotic sisters. No, Edward and I had been via it all, and we had been never more potent. I really like you, he choked into my skin and comfy towards me. Then he kissed my pores and skin softly and tried to benefit control of himself once more. I raked my fingertips via his mop of bronze hair as his head lay on my naked chest. I love you too, Edward. The 10th of November 2001. Forks, Washington. I have no idea why your parents feel the need to buy a bigger house. This one is huge as it is, I grumbled as I helped Edward pack things into big cardboard boxes. Okay, bye. Helped, I meant, I sat there and complained while he did all the work. I couldn't risk going back into Alice's room when she was sorting out her closet. Not only would she thrust clothes on me that I would never wear, but she'd also make me try on outfit after outfit. I don't think I'd make it out alive if I went back in, and I didn't want to take any chances. But in Edward's room it was a totally different story. There were boxes everywhere, sure, but it still had that relaxed atmosphere. No rushing to get to the new place faster. It was just me and him talking while he packed away a lifetime worth of memories. Our memories. It's not like we're going far. So we won't be living down the street from you anymore, it's not a big deal. We'll still only be a 10-minute drive away. Edward shrugged while he ran his hand through his perfectly disheveled bronze hair. I'd had a thing for Edward since I hit puberty. Suddenly he wasn't only my best friend or Alice's brother. No, he was my insanely hot best friend and Alice's sexy as hell brother, the star of all my naughty daydreams and fantasies. Yeah. But it's a 30-minute walk and I can't drive for another year. Edward smiled smugly. I narrowed my eyes and resisted the urge to stick my tongue out at him. Just because you're 2 years older than me and drive a stupid car, doesn't make you great. Edward laughed and pulled me into his arms. I inhaled his scent discreetly. God, he smelled good. No, the fact I'm such an incredibly awesome friend makes me great. The car only adds to my general coolness. The scent of Edward was messing with my head. I wasn't able to form a coherent sentence. Yeah, Bella, he asked, unraveling me from his arms to look down on me. You okay? His emerald eyes were gazing at me and I was mesmerized by them. It wasn't fair how much he could affect me. I really wanted to weave my fingers into his mussed hair and pull his lips down to mine. Bella, hello, Earth to Bella. Yeah, I'm here. I blurted a little too loudly and blushed. Edward looked at me strangely for a moment before he went back to packing. I decided it was time to make myself useful and started with the box under his bed that was labeled, baseball stuff. I opened the flaps and wow. That is not baseball stuff. I shouted as I stared at the various DVDs, most with naked people on the cover. Edward's head flung up from the box he was currently unpacking. He looked like a deer caught in headlights. With lightning speed he ran over to me and ripped the box out of my hands. What the hell, Bella? He roared. His whole face, from his cheeks to the tips of his ears, flamed in embarrassment. I stood there shocked for a moment before realization hit me. I had just found Edward Cullen's porn collection. Hysterical laughter escaped my lips before I had time to stop it. Edward looked out the window, avoiding my eyes at all cost as I doubled over. It's not that funny, he grumbled, holding the box tighter to his chest. Why your face? I managed to choke out between laughter. What the fuck? Glad he ate her. Forrest Hump. What was the other DVD called? Oh, Intercourse with the Vampire. My stomach was literally about to explode, that's how hard I was laughing. Edward seemed about ready to curl up on the floor and die. But as bad as I felt for embarrassing him, I couldn't stop laughing. My body literally convulsed on the floor as I tried to control myself. It seemed the more I tried to stop, the harder I laughed. My laughter turned to quiet giggles after about 10 minutes. Then I took deep breaths and willed myself to keep a straight face while I stood up and turned to Edward. I'm sorry I laughed, but I trailed off. I could feel the laughter threatening to flow out again. Whatever, he mumbled and put the box aside. Guilt washed over me and I felt like a bitch for embarrassing him so badly. He was a guy. Lots of guys had collections like that. Hey, don't be embarrassed. I'm sorry for laughing. I mean, all guys have porn collections. I think it's hot. I did not just say that to Edward. My mind screamed at me. Oh God, I wanted to die. I'd told him he was hot. I told Edward he was hot. Great, now he'll never speak to you again because you're crushing on him. Really? He asked, catching me by surprise. Yeah, it's really hot. Do you remember this summer when I was dating Josh? Edward's eyes narrowed slightly when I mentioned Josh's name. I had no idea why. Well, yeah, I found his and it was awesome. That was a total lie. I'd been hanging out with a guy for a few weeks when Charlie and I went to Florida with the Cullens. Josh was nice, and he took pride in his appearance, something most 15-year-old boys didn't really seem to do. Problem was, when I found his stash, let's just say that unless I grew a penis, Josh wouldn't have been making out with me anytime soon. Edward came forward, barely inches away from me now. Our noses were nearly touching and if I stood on my tippy toes, we could be kissing. I was too much of a wimp to do it though. He looked kind of nervous. You're into that, I guess, but only if it were with you, I added silently. He was so close, I was pretty sure this wasn't friend territory anymore, it was something completely different. His nose grazed over mine and a blush covered his cheeks again. So you'd think I was if you had seen mine. Is he asking what I think he's asking? Seen what? A voice called and we put as much space between ourselves as we could manage. Both of our eyes widened to see Esme looking at said box. Oh, your baseball stuff. She squealed and walked over to it. I froze and looked at Edward in horror. Busted. But instead of waiting for impending doom, Edward sprung into action. No, Mom. His running body blocked my view though I could see his hand reach out to take the box from his mother. The next part one didn't have to see to know what happened. Oh my God, it's not what it looks like. Edward Anthony Cullen, quote, it's not even mine, I swear. I looked on in horror as he tried to dig himself out of this one. I figured it would be better if I didn't say anything, since I'm such a bad liar. I'd probably only end up getting him in more trouble. What's going on in here? Dr. Dilf, aka Carlisle, asked as he strolled into the room. Seriously, if I wasn't so obsessed and entranced by Edward, his dad would totally steal the title of leading man in my dreams. Edward made a whining sound when he saw the whole family apart from Alice, who was probably too enthralled in her closet to come, had gathered for this event. I thought he'd been embarrassed before when I'd found that box, but this was the shit that haunted you forever. Edward threw a look at me that screamed, do something. In return, I gave him a look that said, sorry buddy, you're on your own. Carlisle, we've raised a pervert. Edward, what is this? Boldfinger. Oh dear God. I clamped my teeth into my bottom lip, promising myself that I would not laugh. Edward was embarrassed enough. Clitty clitty bang bang, Carlisle managed to squeak out, the corners of his lips twitching constantly while he held another DVD in his hand. He so wanted to laugh. This isn't funny at all. Esme glared daggers into Carlisle. Esme, he's a teenager. He has needs and urges like everyone else. Oh my God, kill me. Edward groaned into his hands that were placed over his face. No son, it's nothing to be ashamed of. Of course it is. Carlisle, this is filthy. Even Emmett didn't bring this level of pornographic materials home with him. Trust me, he did. He just wasn't as careless as Edward was. You have to learn to hide the porn, kid. Carlisle chuckled, but Edward didn't remove his hands from his face. I decided it was a good time to announce my presence. Edward looked like he was in physical pain now, so I thought I'd try helping him out. He's telling the truth. The box belongs to another guy. Another guy whose name is... I trailed off, trying to think of someone Esme didn't know. Peter Florence, Esme asked. No, John. John Clementine. I knew he was no good. No, not John. Christ, how many people did this woman know? Josh. Josh from Florida gave the box to Edward. I smiled, proud of myself for thinking of Josh. Edward looked like he wanted to kiss me, that's how happy he seemed. Or maybe it was wishful thinking on my part. Yeah, it was Josh from Florida. He's a really sick kid. Edward shrugged and gave me a breathtaking smile. My knees threatened to buckle, he was that beautiful. I don't know how I'd get by when he left for college. He'd only have 3 years to go when I got there anyway, that was if we went to same school. Esme seemed to accept our lie and nodded before telling Carlisle to throw the box away. Though Carlisle lingered in the room with a look on his face that told us he could see through our bullshit. I should throw this box out, but Josh from Florida would probably miss it, right? Carlisle asked with knowing smirk. I blushed and looked away while Edward cleared his throat awkwardly. That's what I thought, he chuckled, placing the box on the floor before he left the room, closing the door behind him. An uncomfortable silence filled the room as Edward took the box and placed it back securely under his bed. I didn't know if he wanted me to go or stay, and I felt too awkward to ask him. I mean, he was probably angry at me. It was my fault his parents found the box that led to the second biggest embarrassment a teenager could face, next to getting caught jerking off, that is. My cheeks turned a deep crimson as I thought of Edward touching himself. Bella, do I have to keep calling or are you going to answer me? Edward snapped, his voice irritated. Yep, he was totally pissed. Sorry, I was thinking, I mumbled, my cheeks bright crimson, and avoided his eyes. I was saying thank you for covering with the whole Josh thing. Mom bought it and Dad's not going to say anything. You saved my ass, he told me as he pushed a piece of stray hair behind my ear. I slowly met his gaze and a crooked smile plastered on his face. Then again, you did put me in the firing line to begin with. It's not my fault you're kinky, asshole. I replied, playfully hitting him. So fucking violent. From what I've seen, that's how you like it. I smirked and raised an eyebrow, daring him to challenge me. He didn't. Instead he leaned down to press a warm kiss on the corner of my mouth. His soft lips didn't just kiss, they caressed my skin and made my whole body tingle like live wire was running through it. His lips were unlike anything I'd ever felt before, and my breathing all but stopped the moment we made contact. Never in my 15 years had such a chaste kiss been so thrilling. I about died and went to heaven. Thanks again, Bella. His eyes captured mine and I forgot where I was. Yeah, I'm gonna Alice needs me, I spluttered. I could hear his chuckles as I stumbled out of his bedroom, slightly dazed. If I didn't know any better, I'd say Edward Cullen liked me more than a friend. 14 years later, I sat with my legs curled into each other as my hands dug into over a decade of memories. The photos were mostly all of the kids in our family, with the odd image of Edward and I together, someone catching a glimpse of our stolen moments. Every picture came with a fantastic memory and not one passed by my gaze without a smile on my face. They were full of cheesy smiles and funny expressions, they were perfect to me. A picture of Edward and I holding a newborn Abby caught my eye and I paused for a moment to study it. We looked so young, so full of happiness and joy. We obviously had yet to experience sleepless nights, I thought to myself dryly. But given the chance, I'd do it all again. My children were the cherry on top of a perfect life. What's got you up here all by yourself? A deep velvet voice asked from the doorway. I looked up with a smile to see my husband looking at me curiously. He hadn't changed. Time was kind to Edward. But I guess he was just one of those people that would be devastatingly handsome no matter what. The only things that remotely showed his age were the tiny crinkles by his eyes and the silver strands at his temples. Yet he was still the most beautiful person I'd ever seen. I'm just feeling nostalgic. I thought I'd look through the old family album, I answered as my eyes drifted back towards the photo in my hand. Want to join? Edward limped over, and although he tried to hide it, the cringe in his eyes told me it pained him. His back had worsened over the years, but the many doctors we'd seen assured us it was nothing serious. You couldn't just get shot in the back and walk away from it without any damage being done, I suppose. For a while, Edward had no need to go to physiotherapy, but in the last 5 years it was essential he went at least twice a week or he'd be bedridden. I sat on the bed and brought the box with me before he had a chance to join me on the floor. He eyed me with a look that said, I could do it if I wanted to. I just rolled my eyes and placed a pillow behind his back as he sat down. I'm not an old man, you know, he muttered grumpily. Yet you're acting like a child. His bottom lip jutted out comically and I couldn't not laugh. What's this? He took the photo I'd been holding and scanned it. A smile lit up his face as his finger traced over Abby's angelic features. I can't believe how fast she's grown. It's as if just yesterday I was holding her in my arms for the first time. And now look at us. She's all packed up and on her way to college. Tears welled in my eyes. Okay, Bella, so Abby is leaving next week. I've allowed you to reminisce by looking at our old pictures, but no more tears. I told myself and shook them away. Edward's hand wrapped around my waist and squeezed gently, letting me know he was here for me. He knew what a hard time I was having letting her go. They have to fly the nest sometime, Bella. Our baby has grown up. I know, I sighed with shaky breath. It's just she'll be so far away, and what if she needs us or something, bah? Stop. Edward cut me off. Bella, do you realize who you're talking about? I tried to compose myself. I knew where he was going with this. This is our daughter we're talking about. Do you remember when she was in the 2nd grade and someone stole her best friend's Hannah Montana lunchbox? We got a call from the school saying she'd stormed into a classroom and demanded justice. I laughed. My baby had always been a law-abiding citizen. Charlie had been so proud when he heard about that one. Or when Tommy Phillips was spreading rumors about Tyler. She was the first one to knock on his door or warn him not to mess with her little brother ever again. I can still hear his mother screaming down my ear to keep Abby off their property or she'd call the police. She should have looked at her own kid before she started judging mine. I scowled. If I recall, you told her just that in a more untamed manner. Edward laughed and I blushed, though inside I was proud. She's her mother's daughter, Bella. She's fearless and smart and she's ready to take on the world. I sighed again, but I couldn't deny that he was right. It's just hard to believe how time has flown. She's nearly 20 years old, Edward. How can we own a 20-year-old daughter? He smirked crookedly and it still made me hot and bothered. Time is a bitch. Tell me about it. She'll do good in Florida. She'd better. We're paying a shitload of money for her to go to college there, I joked. Tell me about it. Edward chuckled deeply. Still stealing my lines, Cullen. I'm sorry. I just deliver them with so much more charisma than you do. I raised an eyebrow and smiled. Sure you do. Can we continue looking at photos or should we keep talking about how great I am? More photos, most definitely. I nudged him in the side playfully and he feigned hurt. For that jab, I think we should keep talking about me. I rolled my eyes but couldn't stop the giggles from erupting. I pulled a picture of Tyler when he was about 6 or 7 sitting on Carlisle's knee. Whatever light atmosphere had been when we were joking around was now replaced by a heavy sense of loss. Edward stared at the picture for a long time before his eyebrows furrowed and his eyes welled with tears. He placed it aside on the bed table. We all miss him, I whispered and leaned towards Edward, embracing him. We had lost Carlisle 3 years ago. He'd only been in his early 70s when we'd found out he had lymphoblastic leukemia. He berated himself for not seeing the signs when he'd been a well-respected doctor for most of his life. But he was too busy enjoying his retirement, seeing his grandchildren grow and his family expand, that by the time we found out about it, it was just too late. He'd held on for just under a year before he couldn't fight any longer. It hit us all hard. No one saw it coming. But no one was hardest hit more so than Esme. She was a shell of her former self without Carlisle by her side, and after 50 years of being together, she couldn't cope with life without him. Only recently had she begun to come back to life. But you could see it sometimes when she thought no one was looking. She'd look into the clouds and you could tell she was wishing he was here with her. We all were. But then again, maybe he was. Maybe he never left. That's what I'd like to think anyway. He was a great father and a better man than I'll ever be. I miss him a lot, Edward admitted into my shoulder. I was shocked. He never really spoke about Carlisle. The wound had always been too fresh. I know, honey, but you're a great father and an even better man. He was so proud of you. He lifted up his head and again gazed at the picture. Do you really think so? I know so, I assured him. He smiled, but I could see he didn't quite believe me. I remember on Tyler's 3rd birthday, I started and suddenly I was there, reliving one of the perfect moments in my life. The party had ended and it was twilight. Everyone was in the backyard around the fire except for us. Tyler was out cold in your arms and Abby was resting her head on your lap. You were playing with her hair and she was dozing off. I was supposed to be getting desert, but I couldn't stop looking at the three of you. It was beautiful. And suddenly there he was beside me. I smiled, remembering Carlisle's warm cinnamon smell and how everything about him reminded me of home. In a way, he was my second father. He put his hand on my shoulder and we watched together in silence. You had no idea we were even there. You were too caught up in our children to notice. And finally, after about 10 minutes, Carlisle squeezed my shoulder and said, "He didn't come out of my belly, but my God, I've made his bones, because I've attended to every meal, and how he sleeps, and the fact that he swims like a fish because I took him to the ocean. I'm so proud of all those things. But he is my biggest pride. Do you know who said that, Bella?" I didn't even try to guess. I was still too caught up to think. Then he told me. It was John Lennon. Edward's brow furrowed. Dad hated John Lennon. He said he respected him for his charity work, but anything else after the Beatles was total bullshit. I chuckled. Yeah, he was still a little bitter that his favorite band broke up. So why would he say that? I smiled. He said, and I'm seriously quoting every word, "I respect him for his charity work, but everything else after the Beatles is total bullshit." Damn, I really knew the old man, Edward choked out as he struggled to keep the tears at bay. Then right before he left me to sit with you, he kissed my head and told me, "But for once I can finally see where he's coming from." We'd strayed away from the photos for about a week after the Carlisle talk. It was emotional and it hurt to speak about him still, even after all this time, but I could see what a positive effect it had had on Edward. He was light and carefree. I think he'd finally moved on from mourning the loss of his father now that he knew Carlisle had been proud with him and content in life before he died. The kids didn't notice the change, they were all too distracted with Abby's move to care, but I did. I hugged her tightly as if she would vanish the second I let her go. "Take care of yourself in Florida, baby." "I will, Mom," she assured me, letting me have this moment, even though I could tell she was itching to detach herself from me and get on the road. "I love you. I love you too, Abby. Are you sure you don't want your dad and I to come up with you for the day and help you get settled?" I offered for the 9,000th time. "No, Mom. Really, I'll be fine. It's just that I worry about you doing this alone. I don't want you to feel like you have to." "Mom, really, I'm an adult now. I'm perfectly capable of unpacking some boxes. Even independent people have moms and dads that help them out now and then." She sighed and gave Edward the "help me" look. He chuckled and pulled me off of her before he crushed her into his arms and kissed her head. "Have fun, sweetie. Call us when you get there so we know you're safe." "Will do, Dad. Love you. Love you too, sport." "Ugh, we get it, you love them. Get out of here already." "I'm sick of this," Tyler whined behind us. He was just trying to act tough, like his sister leaving was a good thing. He was going to miss her. "I love you too, Tyler. Not just them. Come here." She wrapped her arms around his stiff posture. At 15 he was already so much taller than her. He was the spitting image of Edward in more ways than I could count. He had the mop of bronze hair, the lanky posture and the strong Cullen jaw. The only thing I could claim I gave him was the brown eyes. Slowly he wrapped his arms around her, but not tightly. For a moment, I swear I saw him close his eyes and take a breath before he released her. Yeah, get out of here." Edward laughed at his son's antics and squeezed his shoulder and my hand in support. Abby got in the car and drove out of the driveway, beeping the horn as she went. And that was it. My baby had officially flown the nest. "She'll be back before we know it," Edward stated. He was the only one who seemed to be holding it together. "Yeah," I agreed and dried my eyes. "And she'll probably bring back her boyfriend or fiancé next time she comes home," I added lightly. Tyler grunted in agreement. The smile on Edward's face drained right off. "Don't be ridiculous. She's too young to have boyfriends, let alone get married." "Edward honey, when did we start dating?" "In college." His eyes widened. "No, it was a different time back then. Kids are different nowadays. Abby is too smart to go out with mindless, drooling teenage boys, no offense Tyler." "Hey," he protested with a smile and hit his dad's arm playfully. "But seriously, she can't, she's just two." "Way to go, Mom," Tyler laughed at his father's expression. "I think you're going give Dad heart failure." "Nope, that'll be his daughter's doing. They have to fly the nest sometime, Edward," I mocked. We have to call her back. She can go to college in Seattle. No wait, she doesn't have to go to college at all. She can work with me on the building site. What building site? Tyler and I asked in unison. Just a plot of land I'm going to invest in. It's where the tower I plan to lock her in will be located. Yes dear, I patted his arm with a giggle. Now how about we look at some more photos before dinner? Can we get pizza? Tyler asked. Why do you continually ask for pizza when there are 3 frozen ones in the freezer? It's not the same, came Edward's voice. What the hell, you're supposed to be on my side. I will take whoever's side I believe to be right. Thank you, Father. Tyler nodded smugly at Edward, and already I felt the loss of girl power since Abby left. Boys, I sighed. When the pizza, which had been ordered, not the one from our supplies, was devoured, Edward and I started for the stairs to relive more memories. If you guys are going upstairs to do it, please wait till I have exited the house, Tyler voiced with his mouth twisted in disgust. I rolled my eyes at him. Edward looked at me with a hopeful expression. I slapped his shoulder. What? He offered to leave. I'm just saying we should advantage, Edward defended. Tyler, your father and I are not going upstairs for sex. Tyler shuddered at the word. We're going to look at the old family albums. Would you like to join? The kid looked positively green. I'll go. Just promise me never to use the word sex, and would you like to join in a sentence ever again. I sighed and chose to ignore that last sentence. The box was exactly how we'd left it, in the corner of the guest bedroom, with the picture of Carlisle and Tyler placed on the bedside table. Grandpa, Tyler smiled when he saw it sitting there. Is it weird that I've been thinking about him for so long, trying to remember every detail, that it's almost made me forget what he looks like? You're trying too hard, Edward rubbed his back soothingly. If you just trust that you'll never forget him, it'll come more easily. He nodded. Oh my God, Edward, look at this. I laughed as I held the picture out for him to see. Whoa, that was a long time ago. I look exactly like Tyler. What? Our son questioned. We handed him the picture of Esme, Edward, Alice, Emmett and I all crammed into a tiny square photo. I couldn't have been more than 15. It was taken outside the Cullens' old home just before they'd moved. Yeah, we really do look alike, except I'm better looking. Sure you are, kid. Whatever you got from the maestro. Edward pointed at himself with his thumb. Something flickered in my memory and a burst of laughter left my lips. Edward scanned the picture with a furrowed brow before his eyes widened and he looked up at me. He knew what I was laughing at. Please, Bella, not in front of my son. The laughter continued so much that soon I was rolling around the bed in my fit of giggles. What's going on? Nothing, Tyler. Edward tried to assure him. Yeah, nothing, Tyler, I choked out. I just found a very interesting box that day. Bella, he warned, but amusement shone in his eye. That picture was taken on the worst day of your father's 17-year-old life. Shall you tell him or should I? I asked with a smug smile on my face. What the hell is going on? Tyler demanded, his brown eyes darting between the two of us. What your mother is referring to as well, it was a time before the internet. Oh my God, you had a box of porn, didn't you? Edward flushed scarlet and I burst out in giggles. Yes, son. Yes, he did, and Grandma Esme walked into his room and found it when we were unpacking. Luckily Carlisle saved the day. It was your mom's fault. She did virtually nothing the entire day and finally she decides to help, but she had to go for the exact box I told her never to touch. And now we know why. Gross, Dad. Tyler's words said one thing, but the broad smile on his face said another. Edward would still never live that incident down. Please, I've seen your internet history, Edward shot back and Tyler flushed scarlet. My face scrunched up in disgust. No mother ever needed to hear that about her son. I decided it was best to move on to the next picture. This one was a picture that had been taken quite recently. It was of Edward and me with the kids, along with Alice and Jasper's litter at Henry's award thing. He was being recognized that day for his work in pharmaceutical science. Alice and her uncanny predictions, Edward laughed. Your sister is simply amazing. I'll give you that. I remember her smug smile the day she told me Henry had invented a new medicine that stopped some sort of whooping cough in infants. The moment she told me the news I heard her voice ring through my mind, as clear as the day she'd told me why she chose to name her son Henry. I was sitting in the hospital, feeding the baby, when all of a sudden he starts coughing. Not just a tiny cough, like a middle-aged smoker cough. I started panicking and the baby can't breathe, so I shout for help, because Jazzy wasn't there. Then out of nowhere this guy wearing white scrubs takes the baby out of my hand, gives him this weird drink and, Viola, he's better. I asked the guy his name and he says, Henry. Then I woke up and it just fit. I swear to God, after the incident with James, I swore never to doubt her again, but it just sealed the deal further for me. Hey guys, what's this? Edward and I both looked at our son to see him holding a photo of Rosalie and Emmett's wedding. It was a reject photo from Rosalie's album which she gave to me in a pissy state afterwards. Edward and I weren't even making eye contact and I looked like his touch physically hurts me. While he just looked depressed, unhealthy in general. He was too thin and his eyes are sunk into his head with dark shadows framing them. I didn't know then what he'd been through or was going through, just like Tyler had no clue what went on before he was born. We'd promised to tell the kids all that had happened when they were older, but there never seemed to be a right time. I mean, they knew Edward had gotten shot and everyone in Forks knew about the Cullens and James. It's been the talk of the town to this day, so it was impossible to shelter them from it. But that's as far as it went. But this picture was the beginning of our journey. Edward and I locked eyes and he nodded his head, silently agreeing with me that Tyler deserved the truth. That was a long time ago. Your father and I weren't married, I answered. Tyler's eyebrow furrowed. But you and Dad got married straight out of college. This was taken like 7 years later. We never told you this, but we think there's a lot you should know. The rest of the family know because they were there. But we'd tried to shelter you and Abby from the truth until you were old enough. Edward paused for a moment. For a while your mother and I were divorced. Tyler's mouth popped open. Divorced? For how long? 2 very long years, Edward sighed. But why? How? You two love each other more than anyone I know. We do now. But it took a long time to get back to where we are now. I held Edward's hand before I began talking. It all started with a phone call from Alice. The end.